Welcome, everyone.
Woo.
This clusterfuck that you've been listening to, you don't even have to know how long we've been trying to figure out how to start a podcast.
It's been 36 minutes.
It's like, oh my, it's actually, according to my clock, 44. But yes, we have just started this episode, but we have been trying for 44 minutes. And it's basically like, you know, when they talk about like, if you give monkeys enough time, they'll write Shakespeare.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically what's been going on. Matt doesn't have pants on.
Look,
Elliot
it's a loose 40, all right? We just need... It just needs to start.
It's a loose 40.
Now that we're here,
Elliot's
we're good.
You know, reminiscing about cats eating crows.
That was a good cat.
It was a great cat. I miss that cat.
Me too.
Pouncing crows.
Yes, pouncing crows. Matt's trying to take my job. These goddamn kids trying to push us out of the way.
Doing what?
The puns.
Oh.
I mean, you're almost ready to
It's
retire.
like fucking accounting?
Yeah, no, you don't want my job. I don't want my job. Anyways, welcome back. This has been a wild ride this morning, and it's only going to get even better. It's not morning. It is evening for us, so I don't know why I said that. We're keeping it.
Oh my God. This is the Poor Proles Almanac. Andy is talking.
Thank you, Elliot.
My name is Elliot, and we have our co-host with us, Matt.
Howdy.
Coco host? Like Coco Chanel?
I guess I'm the co-host if you really want to.
I don't know. Is there a hierarchy here? We don't believe in hierarchies here, first off. So no, there's no...
Well,
We're not doing this delineation.
See, you missed
shit.
it. That was a
This is
pun.
no hierarchies, so jot that down.
First off, jot that down.
Oh my God. We don't have any notes for this episode, and doesn't
No
sound
notes.
like we have.
It's off the cuff.
It doesn't sound like we have a clue either. So bear with us a little bit.
Today we're talking about Elliot's favorite nut because he can't.
I don't know how
it.
to say it. I feel a little bit lost. I feel like I don't have anything to add. But other than
He also doesn't really believe it's true that it's a real thing. So there's
if
that
it's
too.
extinct, it just like it didn't exist at all.
It's not extinct though. That's the
But-
thing.
Okay, I guess.
Live and well.
Now you live near a
Now-
bunch of them, so we're going to be talking about what you need to go do, track down these suckers as you're
I'm
listening
here to
this.
learn.
He's here to learn a thing. Today we're talking about chinquapins.
Woo.
We're talking about nuts.
Woo.
It's a nut, and
We're
I
getting
feel like
nuts.
I'm gonna.
We're getting deep in.
I feel like I'm gonna go nuts. That's what it is. I feel like I'm gonna go insane.
That's
getting-
it. Yeah.
The nut culture is seeping into your skin, into the pores, all the
Coulda got-
nuts.
coulda-
I feel like
Elliot.
we had enough of this last episode.
Yeah,
No.
I've had
we
enough
haven't.
right now.
We've never
I've had enough right now because I could have gone my whole life without hearing anybody ever utter the phrase "nut culture." I never thought.
You know, sometimes you need to check
No,
your nut
I never
cultures,
thought I'd
you know?
hear-
And yet we need to live through it.
Yeah, I never thought I'd hear.
Power through it, Elliot. Power through
I
the
never
nuts.
thought I'd hear or read that.
You know, it's a little rough sometimes, but it does get easier.
Hey, it gets easier.
I'm so close to done, boys.
All right, so let's talk about chinquapins.
Say it again.
Let's talk about chinquapins.
Okay.
What?
We gotta understand the pronunciation.
Chinkapin.
Okay.
Chinkapin.
It's not qua, like a QU.
So that's the old spelling, but you also see it spelled with a K. But yes,
It's been
Chinquapin.
anglicized.
I mean, it is an anglicized word of an Algonquin word. So now you're taking my notes for later on in the episode now.
Spoiler alert.
Chinkapins, tiny chestnuts. They're like chesticles. Tiny testicles?
Mm-mm.
Oh my god, they're testicles. Tiny chestnut.
But they're not, because they're fruit.
They're not fruit, they're nuts.
But they're like, you know what I mean? They're
No.
not like the pollen producing part of the... Are they? They're like the fruit.
Wait, what?
They're not the pollen producing part of the plant.
No.
They're not the
They're
friggin' I can't think of the right word.
they're literally just like a chestnut. Like, you know what chestnuts
Yeah,
look like,
okay,
right?
so they're
Like-
not testicles.
Like a wild
they're not,
chestnut, like I mean, they're spiky, so they're like a recent,
See a doctor?
not so
or...
recently shaved testicle kind of situation.
Okay.
Have you guys never seen chestnuts? Oh my god,
I've seen a
I
chestnut.
can't believe I have
But
yeah, but like on a tree.
what I'm saying is they're not testicles.
Well, you tell me. You got to look at
Botanically.
botanically speaking. Hold on, I have to share my screen with you guys because apparently you don't know what a chestnut looks
I
like.
don't, I'm kind of scared of what I'm about to see right now.
That's what a chestnut looks like
Oh, okay.
when it's on the tree. It's a spiky ball.
Well,
Okay,
yeah, I guess
It's kind of fuzzy.
seeing this, yeah.
but they're not fuzzy. They are very sharp. It's
Oh,
not
those
great.
are quills. Not like hairs.
No, they're sharp. They hurt.
Yeah, I knew that. I've seen those roasting over a fire before, or heard it in a song or something.
Okay, so this is just going great. So the reason why I want to talk about these guys is we're doing this nut series, and while we could talk about American Chestnut, which is like an interesting enough subject, these are like really cool. They're still active in the landscape, and there's a lot of research going on that's quickly changing the way we understand the Chinquapin on the landscape, despite the fact that there really isn't a whole lot of research that's been done to this point. So like if you go on to like Google Scholar or ResearchGate or wherever, if you look up like Chinquapin in either spelling or its Latinate, you only see like 40 or so papers, and most of those papers are really focused on genetics.
Okay, so why genetics? Are we still in the Gregor Mendel phase of these Chinquapins or something?
Punnett square, Punnett square.
Punnett squares. There's two reasons, really. The first is that it was once divided into a bunch of distinct species, like back when colonizers were showing up and they're like, this is kind of like that other thing, but it's different. It's a new species. Newer research, as people start to understand like how plants actually evolved, made the conclusion that these are actually just one single species with these regional varieties. This becomes pretty obvious when you start breaking down its evolution and its relationship to the American chestnut, which is like the big brother, basically, of these guys. The Chinquapin Latinate is Castanea pumila, and the main varieties that folks that are listening to this that are familiar with them are probably most familiar with is Allegheny, and this is kind of like your, generic brand Chinquapin.
Okay, so we're in the Northeast, and of course New York has to have the standard for everything, so they got the standard Chinquapin, but it's different from the 39 other species of Chinquapins, sort of, but not really. Yeah, it's going to be one of those episodes.
Yeah, sure, let's go with that. So the main one is that Allegheny, and then there's the Ozark. The American chestnut is considered to be most closely related to the Ozark. The Ozark's really considered to be kind of this like ancestral type of Chinquapin, and you could say like less evolved.
So it really is basically a chestnut then?
Sort of. Its range, other than the Ozark, which we're gonna get into, is pretty similar to the range of the American chestnut when it was like fully on the landscape, although it was like maybe like 5 to 10 degrees warmer, so it didn't quite go as far north. It basically stretched from like the tri-state region of like New York, New Jersey, Long Island, down to Florida, out to Texas, and then kind of back up.
Hang on, did you call the tri-state region New York, New Jersey, and Long Island?
I mean, I think he meant Connecticut because I'm pretty sure he knows Long Island isn't a state. Pretty sure.
Bro, Long Island is a state of mind.
Trying to be RZA?
First off, ODB.
You are pretty dirty.
But if we're talking Long Island, you see more like a Bismarcky with much less talent and even less melanin.
Now, despite the wide range of the Chinquapin across eastern North America, the Ozark Chinquapin is restricted only to the Ozark Plateau in Arkansas. Or at least it was thought to be, which is a bit strange considering how it stands in the evolution of the American chestnut and the Allegheny Chinquapin. And as I just inferred, I think we're on the verge of kind of rewriting this history.
Awesome. So Andy's about to crack open the classic earth-shattering research of, let me check my notes here, the tiny, dusty old chestnut.
Well, recently, a new variety has been identified, the Alabama Chinquapin, like just in the past couple years. It's still not even officially considered a new variety, but it's pretty clearly not Ozark or Allegheny. And more, species more closely aligned with Ozark or Alabama have been identified in places as far away as Delaware, raising new questions about what their range actually looked like.
It's the realist sort of range anxiety.
I mean, a little bit. It sounds like it's got quite a bit of range here, but you haven't really explained how it's different than the American chestnut, and I feel like inquiring minds want to know.
So they're pretty similar in terms of nut profile to the American chestnut, but unlike the American chestnut, which was once part of the canopy in eastern North American forests, the growth habit of the Chinquapin is often thought today as more of like a shrub or an understory tree. I know you're going to be shocked about this, but this actually isn't completely true.
All right, I'm pretty interested in what you're saying now, so I'm going to let the phrase nut profile just slide.
I mean, canonically, it's one of his more innocent phrases, probably. But brutal mental image, though. It reminds me of that movie Real Splice scene from Fight Club.
I mean, I was just like 5 minutes talking about like the prickly, not quite recently shaved
They were so smooth.
That are the American or the chestnut, and you guys didn't even flinch at that. So What's up, guys?
I guess the imagination is a powerful thing.
And nor will we, because we're mature. We're borderline professional educators here. We need a little bit of maturity.
This is basically like the magic school bus, but for
I have to remind you, you have to be paid to be a professional, Matt. We are amateur at best.
Magic school bus, but scarier and a lot more boring.
Would you take a free bus ride?
From this guy?
Elliot? No.
Any of us?
Definitely not me, but I mean, actually, definitely none of us. Matt looks like he could be in a Stephen King novel. Elliot looks like he might shoot me just for being white, and I mean, I look also.
I wouldn't shoot you just for being white, but it doesn't help.
So yeah, things are going great. Here's the point. Now, historically, it's believed that the Chinquapin evolved from the American chestnut. It includes shrubs and trees that occupy dry, open, usually disturbed sites with poorer soils. Now, Allegheny Chinquapin is the far more commonly found Chinquapin and typically has multiple stems with no clearly defined leader, giving the plants a bushy appearance. The Ozark, much like the American chestnut, usually grows single upright stems in the subcanopy. Historically, this was well known and understood. Now, you can look at news articles talking about Chinquapins 60 feet tall and even taller, many of which were far outside the Ozark Plateau.
So, like the Mandela effect, we thought it was a tree, but it's a bush. Or we thought it was a bush, but it's a tree.
Both.
Okay, so.
Also, fuck the Mandela effect. All right, there's a real thing. These actually existed.
No, man, it's true. Is the Chinquapin just the OG Sinbad?
Who's Sinbad?
Have you seen Sinbad recently? Why does he look like Ice-T?
Oh my God, I'm sorry. I can only handle one brain-numbing question at a time. Matt, man, I don't know how to answer that question other than he's a genie. And Andy, what the fuck is wrong with you?
How much time you got?
Not enough, but we should definitely record that one day. And I will definitely label that tape as your manifesto for work. I mean, the feds.
Oh, yeah. How is work?
Yes.
And
Speaking of the feds, Elliot, how is work?
Coffee machine went down the other day, and Barry was pissed.
Christ, Elliot, you're ruining me. All this is backed up by more than just the Mandela effect, for the record. Older texts prior to the chestnut blight shine some light on this difference, often referring to mature Ozark Chinquapins as reaching 60 feet or more in height, like I said. Unlike the American chestnut, however, the Ozark Chinquapin appears to have existed primarily on the forest edges, often on poorer soils and rocky ledges, typically at a density of like 1 per acre, or at least as we understand them today, unlike the clusters of Allegheny from like typical like suckering.
So, sensing kind of a theme with a lot of stuff we talk about, I guess species of plants we talk about, they're the same but also like complete opposites.
Yeah, that checks out. I kind of called it from the start. It's going to be one of those episodes.
That's true.
I mean, you can never be wrong if it's one of those.
You're the real Babe Ruth of knowing what Andy's going to say.
That's why I keep Elliot around.
It's like one giant fortune cookie metaphor where like everything is nothing and all at once. I don't know.
The only fortune cookie I ever remember is the one from Rocko's Modern Life.
It's still so good.
Do you remember it?
Bad luck and misfortune will invest your pathetic soul for all eternity.
For all eternity, yes. It's so fucking good.
The infest part is the best part of that fortune cookie.
Yes. It's just like so beautifully written. Like, man, I would have loved to be in that writer's room.
Well, do you remember the scene with the little elephant typing it and putting it in the cookie? And he like looks at the camera and breaks the fourth wall and it's just like, eh.
Yeah, it's so good. What were we talking about?
Chinquapins.
Chinquapins. Oh yeah, so they're on kind of these like rocky edges, right? They're not really in the forest, so to speak. They're on kind of the edge of the forest, right? What we can do today is we can go to these forests where they existed, and the remains give us like a lot of interesting insight into how these trees existed on the landscape, right? Now, one of the things is that they're often not very straight, and there's a few reasons for this. They have these jogs that are called bayonet points by arborists, and they're evidence of like the primary shoots dying on the tree. The reason for this is actually really simple. The Chinquapins are just really fast growers, and they'll grow throughout the year. They don't really slow down, and they'll not harden off quick enough for the cool winter weather, which will usually, come in quickly around the Ozarks, and that causes those terminal buds to die. And in turn, like one of the lateral buds on the side of the branches will take over. So like if you've ever like fertilized a fruit tree in the summer and had like that big spurt of late growth, especially when it rains heavily in the fall, and then you get hit with like an early frost, then you're probably pretty familiar with this.
I mean, the plant needs the meds from that bent carrot commercial. What a nightmare. I don't know how that made it to TV. I just feel like that's a magazine for a doctor's office kind of ad, but they aired it all the time.
Yeah, let's go with that. You know what? I think we need a break.
Hey, we're taking a quick break in the episode to remind you that you can get a whole lot more information from poorproles.com. On our website, we have access to our supplemental reader for the podcast, which provides more depth and context as well as thorough citations for all of the stuff we talk about in the show. You can also sign up for our newsletter, which updates you about limited releases, such as various nursery stock that we sometimes sell through the Poor Proles website, as well as updates about new merch that we have. You can also support the show through that website, poorproles.com, where you have access to our Patreon and our Substack to get early releases for articles and episodes. Now, if you enjoy the show and are just looking for even more audio content, go check out Tomorrow Today, which just wrapped up season 1, or tune into The Gastropocene, which is a project of myself and Dr. Aisha Khan to discuss the way our diets have driven the Anthropocene and what it looks like to use our diets for good. Now, back to the show.
This episode really needs like a companion set of like graphs and images
Drugs.
references the shit you're talking about.
Yeah, I know. There's an article that'll be out with it, so it'll be
Do you
fun.
guys know what commercial I'm talking about?
I don't.
I do not. I don't remember
Oh my
this.
God. I have to look it up. It's even bentcarrot.com.
Jesus Christ.
It's called Xiaflex, and it's to fix...
Broke dick?
Yes, that's literally what it's for.
I kind of remember it, like, vaguely.
Yikes.
But
Peyronie's disease.
yes. Welcome back. We're working on that Chinquapin goodness and reminding you to be nuts about nuts, or at least, like, slightly excited like a broken carrot, Elliot.
I mean, if you're listening to this podcast, you better fake being excited about nuts, or we'll sick normal norm on you and all you nutty nut haters.
Don't mess around with this. Normal Norm is not so normal to when he's trying to fight you.
Yeah, it's his rutting season, normal norm.
When he does that crab walk with the nutcrackers coming towards you,
It's
horrifying.
it's that type of fighting where they're like on the ground, they're like on their back all the time and trying to kick up at you. It's kind of a nightmare.
You mean jujitsu?
Yeah, I'm talking. Yeah. Normal Norm is
Normal norm knows
beat me up
knows
with
jujitsu.
jujitsu.
That's our next bumper sticker.
There's them.
There it is.
Pissed. Yeah, Normal Norm knows jujitsu.
No, normal norm beat me up with his jujitsu.
Yeah.
It'll be very esoteric, but the 3 people that get it, chef's kiss.
The 3 people that get it.
They're gonna love that bumper sticker. It's a good.
It's us, first off. The 3 people
Yeah.
are right here.
I want one.
All right, so let's talk about this Chinquapin, specifically the Ozark, because that's one that I think is really interesting. Now, despite the fact that like chestnuts have been like a huge part of the indigenous diet here in North America, and the Chinquapin is no different, right? So despite the fact that it has been a part of these cultures, there really wasn't a whole lot of evidence that was recorded on the Chinquapin itself. Like if you go through like old records, which I have, of like colonists showing up and documenting what they see, you'll see them talk a lot about the Chinquapin and that they're harvesting it, but really not a whole lot more. That said, we can suspect that like the Allegheny, for example, was probably kept in like a thicket type system, right? And this was probably on the outside of the typical burning cycles of much of the landscape, which would make like a lot of sense because thickets were something that were managed quite a bit. So this would it would make sense to do that. The additional part of that is like burning tends to cause Chinquapins to send up massive amounts of shoots. And this can create like dense monocultures of Chinquapin, which would, again, be considered of value if you're trying to get them to produce nuts, right? The biggest problem is that we just don't have a lot of documented evidence on how these trees were managed.
It seems like the moral of the story here is always leave a note. Make better notes of how you're managing your trees. For history.
For science?
For Frodo.
Yeah, I don't know what that means. Like, I barely know who Frodo is. He's in,
You're like the worst kind of nerd.
I feel like you could get really into the Lord of the Rings.
Oh, that's what that's from? I was going to say something else.
I love it. I mean, how do you not? You're like the worst kind of nerd, Andy. Read the books.
No, I am the
You don't
best.
even like nerd shit.
No, I thought Frodo was in something else. Lord of the Rings?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
is
what
it?
he just
I was
said.
too busy trying to
Yeah.
rack my brain, trying to figure out where it was from.
This fucking guy.
I can see the look in your
I
eyes,
was like
man.
zoning in, like going through the mental catalog of movies that I don't care about.
He's going through his mind palace
My-
of shit he doesn't know.
Exactly.
It looked like your brain. was actively
Yeah, it
smoothing
was
out,
bad. Could see the smoke coming out.
like Mitch McConnell.
I was just turtling real hard right there for a second.
Yeah.
Just got that turtle mode.
Straight up McConnelling.
So we've been talking about like the American chestnut and how it's related to the Chinquapin. So part of understanding is that the Chinquapin is also a chestnut. It's in the same family. So it also gets chestnut blight. Now, most people that are listening to this podcast, I would imagine at least, are familiar with chestnut blight and the American chestnut, and the fact that if you go in like the forests of like the east coast of North America, you'll still see chestnut sprouts that are coming up from like these old mature trees that had once existed and since been killed off the landscape. And the thing that is important to understand is that when we look at those chestnuts, all of them exist because of previously seeded trees, right? With the exception of like a handful of trees that we know of, the idea of like trees producing from like a fruit, like a seed being dropped and germinating and like creating a new tree is basically non-existent for American chestnut.
So it's a clone.
Yeah, it's just it's the sprout from a coppice. So there's no new genetics, so to speak, going really into the American chestnut other than a handful of trees that exist out there that seem to be still producing nuts.
Oh, okay. So it's like all besides for this like super group, which are you saying is like a very like well documented and researched group.
Yeah, I mean they're not really important for this story, because we're not really.
But other than that, it's like most of what we see is like asexual reproduction.
Yeah, it's dead trees that are resprouting from the stump, and then they get blight again, they die again, right?
Okay.
While these chestnuts sprout from the ground where they might have been exposed to fire or cutting, or in this case, the fungal blight, the method of that destruction, whether it's fire or fungal blight or whatever, significantly impacts how long that stump can survive and continue to send up shoots.
Is this a metaphor?
No, man. I think we just have depression. It sounds like one though.
Yeah, I mean, basically, that is the what depression feels like. Now, these small sprouts of chestnuts you might stumble across in the woods are a glimpse into the past, but not as many often think. According to research in the 90s, less than 5% of the original pre-blight canopy chestnut trees were still sprouting 60 years after the appearance of blight in Massachusetts. Elliot, you might remember from the coppicing episode that you can basically coppice forever.
If you do it right.
Yeah, if you do it right. So the fact that less than 5% means that this fungal blight is making it so that it's not doing it the right way. What this also means is that the sprouts we see of American chestnut today are actually very rare survivors from this like century-long war with the chestnut fungus, or they're the seeds from those final trees that were overcome with blight. So a handful of those might be trees that dropped seed right as the blight was hitting, and those seeds were able to germinate into new trees.
So what you're saying is that like for every sprout of American chestnut we see, there are like 19 trees that like are missing.
Yeah, something like that.
Good maths. So I'm guessing, this ecological event caused a massive change in the ecosystem. They can't go from being everywhere to nowhere and not cause some changes. So it kind of sounds like a big deal, maybe because it isn't 5,000 years ago, like other stuff in our episodes. It was yesteryear, which seems closer and more pertinent to my existence relatively. So it's like a new big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Destruction in recent memory.
In plant world, it's basically like 9/11, which is very appropriate for when we're recording this. What I'm saying is American chestnut blight is plant 9/11.
That
The bumper
might
sticker,
be...
never forget the
Never
the
forget.
American
Might be-
chestnut.
I like it. Yes.
Yeah.
There we go.
That is controversial enough to actually work.
It could be never forget, but it's 2 chestnut trees.
We're on to something here.
Yeah, it's going to piss a lot of people off.
That's what we like to do.
We could get it. Yeah, with
Write that down, Matt.
With terrible bumper stickers.
Yes. We got to do it like, oh man, can we do it like the Twin Towers, but they're 2 trees?
That's what Matt just said. You keep just...
Sorry, Matt.
This guy fucking never listens to me.
You sound like my wife.
Matt, I got you, buddy. I won't let him get away with it.
Hey. All right. So, even though the American chestnut's been basically wiped off the earth, right?
Eradicated.
This is where kind of the Chinquapin can really step in, even if it's only temporarily. Now, in contrast to the American chestnut, about 20% and locally more than 75% of root systems of large pre-blight Chinquapins in Arkansas were still alive about 45 years after blight was first introduced, based on the same research project. Now, what this showcases is how, despite both species being impacted by the fungus, Chinquapin shows significantly more long-term resistance. However, it's important to note that this blight occurs at much higher frequency in those dense stands of Chinquapins, the ones I was saying, like from the fire burning, and has been noted to have up to 70% of these dense patches to have that die off, meaning that even if dense patches of Chinquapins were more common in the past, we would still be less likely to see their remains on the landscape today, like what's been found in Delaware.
Of course the findings are in Delaware. I even know somebody who was born in Delaware, and I still don't think that state exists. And I work for the government. Never mind.
There are actually 49 stars on the thing. Delaware stopped existing.
Nobody counts the Matt.
It's the Mandela effect.
Yeah.
Everyone just thinks Delaware's a state. It's not.
Yeah. When was the last time you counted the stars off a flag you saw? That would be kind of fun. If you had a flag hanging in a public space, and you just kept taking off a star at a time.
I thought you were talking about counting the stars. I was like, why would that be fun for anyone?
I'm very patriotic, Andy. You know this.
You look it.
Thanks.
You and your 60 bags of fertilizer behind you. Not suspicious at all.
It's a lot of ammonium nitrate.
Yeah. Well, let's not talk about the stuff.
Back to the Delaware findings.
Yeah, so do you want me to explain Delaware or...
Yes. Go, please.
Yes?
You should probably explain it more because people have no idea what the fuck we're talking about, and that's what we're here for. So explain away.
Before I can explain that, we got to dive into the Allegheny Chinquapin, all right?
All right, I'm just going to warn you now. If this starts with a squirrel, I'm a snap.
All right, no. So not this time, at least. So while we focus primarily on the Ozark Chinquapin and its kind of unique character in comparison to the common Allegheny American Chinquapin, the Allegheny's unique shape places it within a slightly different environment than the Ozark. So the Ozark is this big tree that kind of exists on the edge of the forest, right? And it's like very similar to a chestnut and like size and stuff like that. Today, the Allegheny is often used by like native plant specialists in like thickets, like I was saying. Like you can burn it, it'll sprout up a whole bunch and like provide a bunch of nuts and so on. It often is used in like dry, sandy soils, and places like where I live, it's a perfect plant. Now, its bushy shape is really great for like nesting birds, and again, that quick regeneration after fire. Being a nut tree, it's like very comparable to like how we think of like the hazelnut, right?
Man, I'm a sucker for bushy nuts.
All this low-hanging fruit hangs lower than these shrub nuts over the ground.
Speaking of bushy nuts, here's our friend Norm.
Bring Norm in here.
Hey there, it's me, Crazy Norm, down at Normal Norm's Nut Emporium on John Brown Drive. We're going nuts for nuts in Nutty November. We've got big nuts, small nuts, chestnuts, ground nuts, nut butter, buttery nuts, nut milk, milky nuts, nut cream, creamy nuts, and for the late night crowd, chocolate-covered CBD deep fried nuts. Want to join the Nutstravaganza? Nut up and join the Nut Posse. Join other members and get your sack of nuts pounded for free whenever you come in and make the creamiest nut milk you've ever had in your own kitchen. Crazy Norm's Nut Emporium, 420 John Brown Drive, or online at portproles.com.
The sound of his voice makes a chill run down my spine.
A good chill.
Nope.
You sure?
He goes,
Yep.
nope. Not the good kind. That fucking That
Bad
lizard
kind.
brain amygdala fight or flight just kicks right in.
Nope. Oh God! Thank God for normal Norm. What would we do without him?
Our
Norman
boy.
Norm's got bumper stickers too. Like, if you guys hop on our website, we got some, and we're gonna keep them coming.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
I need to buy normalnorms.com. I wonder what's there at the moment.
Sure, let's set up.
There's definitely nothing. We should check though.
Let's set up a whole fake website for all our nightmare fuel.
Hell yeah. Are we all Googling this right now, just for the
Are
record?
you seriously looking up normal Norm?
I've got really bad Wi-Fi, so it's just taking me to WordPress.
Someone has normalnorms.wordpress.com that it forwards to,
It's a WordPress.
Interesting.
but that's all that there is.
It also
So,
says influencer, storyteller, adventurer, friend.
yes.
These all describe normal Norm.
I mean, he might be running it actually.
Did we just
Ugh,
bring normal Norm into
man.
existence? Because I am scared.
Yes, I think so. And I believe Normal Norm is a man of his word, and he will do all the things he promises.
Get back to the Chinquapins.
Let's talk about the Capins.
Chin napkins? Because that's the only thing I can see.
Capin sounds like it's to do with
No,
ketamine.
I was gonna
Capins
say
are
K-pop, but-
Klonopins. Something else completely different.
Oh,
Don't drink on them.
yeah.
Whatever you do,
Elliot here with your
do
medical
not
advice.
drink on Klonopins. It's bad.
Normal Norm will tell you all about it.
You heard it here first.
It's how you get the lotion in the basket from Normal Norm.
Ugh.
Okay.
So let's talk about
Do you think...
the only true Chinkapin in the eyes of Normal
I was going
Norm.
to say, do you think Normal Norm cares more for the Ozark Chinquapin or the Allegheny Chinquapin?
Now this is where we get down to it.
This is where
This is the real hard-hitting journalism.
this is it.
Let's get to the meat of this nut. See, that's how you do it, Andy.
Yeah, that was
That
well
is
done.
how you do it.
You
That was
delivered it
a
with
good
that like
one.
deep God. My nipples are hard.
Ooh, I'm so glad we're close to the end of this episode.
Oh, we're not. All right.
Ugh.
So, what we're going to talk about now is Norm's favorite Chinkapin, which is the Alabama Chinkapin.
Man of the people. Just maybe not those people.
Anyways, Alleghenies, am I right? Wait, no, never mind. I was thinking of abalones. Those have a shell, but it's not a nut, not even close. So, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's not. Now, there's many first-hand accounts of the Allegheny Chinkapin being managed in these massive monocrops like what we've been talking about, which may have been the byproduct of initial burns to create the nut thickets. There's records from Neomatia and his nut orchard with the creek in modern Florida, which was discovered by colonists to Thomas Nuttall. Nuttall? What a great
That's his name for this episode?
A nut finder guy. Thomas Nuttall. Yeah, let's go with that.
He was just born into it.
That's a fucking pseudonym. He murdered people and then
Right.
started nut farming. And they were
No,
like,
he's
what's,
not a
what's
nut
your
farmer.
name? He's like, I'm Thomas Nuttall. I grow all the nuts in town.
He was a
Yeah.
researcher, discoverer, whatever, the voyager, some bullshit fucking term, colonist. All right,
So he definitely murdered people. Yeah. Okay.
absolutely,
And then he went to a new place.
yes, and brought all the nuts. So he documented Chinkapins in southeastern Oklahoma in 1819, and again, we've seen the Chinkapins in Sussex County, Delaware, which is near the coastal plain near a Nanticoke settlement. So basically, my point is that like the Allegheny Chinkapin has been documented across all of eastern North America and even like the Midwest, right? Researchers for this Delaware project, which we're working our way to it, right, believe that this isolated population of Chinkapins is actually probably part of a breeding project, and like the honey locust populations that are found in the Northeast alongside like Cherokee settlements, these trees were moved by indigenous people because of their value, specifically for creating perennial food systems.
Okay. So how can they tell how old they are from like 200 or 500 years ago? Like, are they counting rings on these trees? How does that work?
So it's actually kind of interesting. The Chinkapins were planted in a thicket that's like a crescent moon shape, and the entire understory is covered in box huckleberry. Now, what makes that really important is that the box huckleberry has gone through this weird evolutionary fuck up, we'll say, so it can only propagate by cloning, and it clones very, very slowly. Now, further, because they only expand by cloning, that means it would have had to travel to this specific spot, which, like the Chinkapins that provided their canopy, there aren't any box huckleberries really nearby. Based on the size of this patch, researchers estimate it to be over 1,000 years old.
Man, that is nuts.
It is.
Wait,
Nuts, Matt. Nuts.
God,
it's nuts.
You had to give him that layup, didn't you? Now I'm mad at you, Matt.
Rightfully so.
I want to kind of tie this all up because I know we're kind of going all over the place with the Chinquapin, right? Now, what makes the Chinquapin so valuable is that quick growth rate that we talked about and that nut production. And again, they can fill a lot of ecosystem services that the American chestnut historically has done. Despite the small size of the Allegheny Chinquapin, it's been shown to produce similar volumes of nuts in comparison to the previous records of the American chestnut. Because of this, and unlike the American hazelnut, which has struggled due to eastern filbert blight, the Chinquapin has significant potential as a scalable crop and a silvopasture type tree. But it does have those blight issues, which is part of why it's really struggled to make a mark in even like the niche health food market or anything like that.
So, come on, all you food bloggers. Help out the poor Chinquapin.
Yeah, I agree. We will even read your ridiculous amounts of pointless personal exposition about you and your inspiration for the recipes or whatever you got. I mean, if you write a few recipes for it, that'd be cool. But I'm just going to be honest. We'd still appreciate if you put the jump to recipe button in there so I can skip that bullshit.
Elliot's Life Hacks. Give us a jump to recipe button.
Do it.
So we've talked about the Ozark and the fact that, like, despite the fact that it's, if you look at like a map from the government, the map for where the Ozark Chinquapin is in the Ozarks. We have tons of documentation about this being many other places. We also now have new research the last couple of years about this Alabama Chinquapin, which is very similar to the Ozark in terms of structure and how it grows, but it's not quite the same. And I didn't really want to get into like the details of what makes it different, just that it exists. And there's other varieties that people are trying to advocate are also varieties, and they don't fall into these three categories. So we've somehow gone from like there being 7 or more different Chinquapin species to now 3 going on more possibly varieties of Chinquapins. So despite the fact that science kind of ignored what used to exist, saying, oh, we figured it out, you guys are all wrong and idiots, we're now kind of going back and saying, actually, there's some scientific basis for a lot of this. We're just relearning it again, right? In the same process, we're slowly, very slowly starting to realize that like the footprint of these trees are much more diverse than we initially thought, which is important and interesting because when we start thinking about how do we restore these landscapes around us, we need to really understand what they did look like. Because you think about like the Overton window of like the human experience and what we think of as like normal is pretty short in terms of like what the ecosystem evolves to, right? If you're to look at like these, again, Chinquapins that are 60 feet tall, that tree took one person's lifetime to grow, right? If somebody was born the day after it was cut down, they could live to 60 years old and have never seen a tree that size until it grew from that first seedling, right? So we have a very poor understanding of what our ecosystem looked like. That requires us to start rethinking what we know based on anecdotal evidence and actually start to dig into some of this really historic information from the footprint of the Chinquapin and so on. Further, the other piece that we haven't even touched really is this idea of like climate change, right? And understanding how these species have to shift to be in a place where they're best suited to survive. Now, fortunately, research has been underway and is pointing to a really bright potential future for the Chinquapin as long as we're willing to like help it overcome the barriers of that disease and travel distance. Using model projections by 2100, assuming little is done to combat climate change in any meaningful way.
Oh yeah, we went from research to do.
Yes. Sites with suitable habitat across all scenarios were identified and suggested as restoration targets, most notably places like where I live, the lowland New England and high elevation southern and mid-Atlantic Appalachian? I don't know. You know what I'm saying. Those regions. Now, while research has been focused primarily on American chestnut, the climatic conditions for Castanea, required by Castanea dentata, are pretty similar to the Chinquapin, right? We talked about it's basically similar the American chestnut likes those healthier soils, but otherwise, like they're pretty similar. These will go on the outskirts of that same forest. They do well in poorer soils, all that important stuff. That points to the most important piece of Chinquapin planting, and that is the right soil conditions. And that's basically sandy but not overtly wet soil conditions.
So, Andy, are you saying the boys are back in town?
If you mean by boys Chinquapins and town you mean the Northeast, then yes.
Okay, so because of the lack of plants that already exist in the landscape currently, it sounds like we've got our work cut out for us to start bringing them, back.
Yeah, you could say that. I've been pointing to this idea that like the Chinquapins are important ecologically speaking for like native landscape pollinator services and so on. We don't actually have any research showing that the Chinquapin might support a similar profile of insects, but anecdotally speaking, it's as close as we can get until like an American chestnut returns to the landscape.
So it's time for farming Chinquapins?
The Capin farm.
Sounds like a drug lab to me. I just...
Yeah.
Yeah, it should.
Just going to flag that one right quick.
I mean, with all that fertilizer, I don't think the Capin farm's your biggest concern.
Nope.
I'm not taking notes for work.
Yeah, no, Elliot never would, first off.
I don't have a pen.
Dedicated, yeah.
Listen, working with you guys, I've gotten 3 promotions in 4 years, okay?
Yeah, and it's not like there's anything else around us.
You thought he could buy that house out of nowhere? Like, come on now. I've seen what he made. All right, so my point is, like, the Chinquapin, like, has, like, a ton of uses. It's got the nuts. It's got tannin-rich bark, which is used and historically has been used for dyeing fabrics and leather. It also has this really rot-resistant wood. That is why you can still find like American chestnut logs in the forest, is because the chestnut as a whole, like species, is just like really rot-resistant despite being fast-growing. So it's like this win-win, right? Fortunately, folks are working to kind of forge new relationships with these plants by searching for what's been left behind by past generations for us. We've had the Experimental Farm Network on here twice, right? And one of the projects that they're working on is propagating a cultivar that's called Aussie's Giant Chinquapin, which is named after a hobby breeder in Tidewater, Virginia, who had been working on selecting the largest nuts to propagate. He'd also worked to develop machines to make them a viable commercial crop, which is pretty cool. And he'd been working on that until his passing in 2012 at the age of 85. Now, this is just one example of how breeders had worked to improve the quality of these nuts for human use, and there's probably untold breeding projects to be rediscovered across the entire country.
So the moral of this story is grow more Chinquapins and learn about the history of your local trees.
And don't trust your local Fed, Elliot.
Oh, I don't. I just take their money.
From a different angle, we've got like the Ozark Chinquapin Foundation, who are working to preserve and improve genetics and restore much of the foundational knowledge about the tree and its uses, including experimental projects to replicate supposed uses of the tree, things like bow making, fabric dyeing, and like all those kind of things that aren't ever going to be capitally invested into, but are still like important for us as like humans that live on the landscape to know how to use. Now, there are many similar stories to this to many of our native species here in North America. Chinquapin is just one little one in a vast array of species that we've basically ignored or forgotten about. And it's really up to folks like ourselves to start like really humbly attempting to refigure out how to engage with these plants on the landscape and bring them back to life.
Yep, so Andy's main takeaway is to go befriend the 90-year-old fuddy Luddite with giant trees in his yard, but don't let him hit you with sticks. If he does, tell him Normal Norm's going to get him.
Exactly.
And I don't think that guy's ready for jujitsu.
Yeah, no one's ready for Norm.
I mean,
Just
Norm's
saying.
going to dodge that double barrel. You know he's got it.
You know, it's like Matrix shit with that guy. I'm telling you.
I just pictured the the Matrix cartwheel, but it's Normal Norm.
All I can picture with Normal Norm is the fucking Commence a Jiggling from Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Oh,
what the hell's his name?
Happy Time Harry? Is it Happy?
Was it Happy Time Harry?
It's Happy Time. It's not Carl. It's Happy Time.
Jesus. Okay, wait. What do I gotta look up?
Commence the Jigglet.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
No, Happy Time Harry was the knockoff one that Meatwad got.
Jiggle Billy.
Was it Jiggle Billy? It was the Jiggling Hillbilly?
Yes. That's all I picture with. Look up
Billy from what show?
Jiggle Billy Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Yeah, I just typed in Jiggle Billy and it came up.
Commence a jiggling.
Y'all. Commence the jiggling.
I don't know why I got these night vision goggles.
Why do you have these night vision goggles? You're a farmer. I don't know why I have these goggles.
Anyways, that is Normal Norm in my head, is that guy right there.
That makes sense.
Right?
Yep.
So for people that are listening to this and they're still, and you're like,
God help you.
I haven't gotten enough Chinquapin action. Go on Substack. This episode's Substack is now free. If you're super excited about other nut projects and the other shit we do here, you can go subscribe there, get early access. Same with Patreon, all that cool stuff. We put everything up. Early access for people that support us because, you know.
We love y'all.
We love y'all.
Thank you.
But yeah, we're going to be getting into more nuts next week and the week after and the week after that and the week after that.
Damn it. I never thought I'd ask. How many nuts is too many nuts? I think I have post-traumatic nut disorder. Holy shit. I got to pitch a treatment for that to the FDA.
Elliot just realized he does not like bukkake. Too many nuts.
Very post-traumatic. Very post-traumatic right now.